All right, what is going on? How is everybody doing today? Welcome to the Risen Fallen podcast. I am your host, Mark Hendrickson. If you're brand new to this show, what you can expect is open and authentic conversations about things like mental health, self-development, and how to get your life moving in the right direction. What is going on? Happy Monday morning, and I hope that you are doing well. It is Saturday evening for me as I record this, so we're going to, pretty much just upload this and get this out there for you on Monday morning, but, I'm just chilling out. I had a pretty good day. It was a very active day. I kind of woke up, went for a little run, did a little bit of a workout here, and then I went for a hike with a good friend of mine. And people are talking nowadays. You know, there's a lot of shit going on. There is a lot of stuff going on. If you go on, I've started to use, use Twitter a little bit more again recently, and I'm just kind of posting right now, like all the clips that I post on Instagram and stuff like that, but I've just kind of felt like, for a while now, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way or what, but Instagram has always kind of been like my, the main social media platform that I used, but, after kind of separating myself a little bit more from social media, it's, I've kind of felt like it's like a little bit more of a ghost town. Like, I feel like half the shit that's on there is just like fake shit. And like everything seems to be just like bots nowadays. And I noticed like kind of like, I know. I mean, I never had that much traction in terms of like traffic before. And I don't really, but I just feel like, it just kind of feels like a ghost town. And Twitter, I feel like has... it's just a little bit more entertaining. It's just a little bit more weird and a little bit harder to navigate. There's just like, because there's just so much shit on there. So, but the thing is, dude, is people, like, they're talking about everything right now. Like, I don't know about everyone else's conversations, but, or their algorithms and everything like that, but I get a lot of like political stuff, obviously. Like we get a lot of stuff about Trump, a lot of stuff about tariffs, a lot of stuff about Trudeau, a lot of stuff about Musk, a lot of stuff about, Danielle Smith, other Canadian politicians as well. So it's just kind of politics left, right, and center on my algorithm. Also, trending is the FBI. That's an interesting trending topic. People are talking about everything, People are talking about... the drones in the sky, the elections, the insurrections, there's like genocides going on in the world and war and stuff. And so like people are always talking. And I went on a hike today and I was talking away with one of my good friends of mine. And we talked about fucking everything. Like we met up for a little hike. I think it was like just around 9 we met up, and then we were sitting there talking for like I think we hiked for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then we're like in the parking lot talking away for at least an hour after the hike, and we're just talking away. And a lot of the times people will talk and they're talking about their problems, and sometimes people are talking about their wins or their victories or some memes that they watch or the shows that they watch or what they found funny or entertaining. But a lot of the time I've noticed that, and myself included, a lot of the time we kind of talk about like surface level problems and things like that. Like, I like to encourage it. I think, let's talk, like, let's like chat about it. Let's go over these issues. But I think a lot of the time when we're talking about issues, there's kind of like two different types of things. Like sometimes we're talking about issues because we're trying to find solutions and we're trying to be productive and we're trying to like, hey, like I'm going through this issue, like am I a freak for going through this? Am I weird for going through this? And we're just trying to get like a good ground or a sense of like, is this like a normal thing to be going through? Like, am I viewing this right? Am I viewing this wrong? Like, should I be, there's all these different like questions going through our head. And then there's other times where we like just kind of like talk about issues and problems in the world because, maybe we just like to fucking stir the pot a bit. We just like to kind of, and there's people that are like, like that. And I'm like that sometimes. Sometimes I just kind of like, come by, drop. It's like when you go to like a little family dinner and you're sitting there and maybe like, Maybe you're just around, maybe not a family dinner, maybe you're just like around a group of people and they're just kind of like all squares. And maybe you're like a little bit like me, like you're a little bit weird. You're a little bit, your algorithm feeds you some weird things. And so you just kind of like drop a nugget just to kind of stir the pot of just like, yeah, well, maybe it wasn't just like a lone gunman that shot a lone gunman that shot a president in the head. Maybe, maybe. And anyways, so I'm not even trying to say that it's like a bad thing to talk about issues or talk about problems or anything like that. And obviously, like, I'm joking around, but like, let's be real. Like, if two guys get together and they're talking about problems, that's kind of a beautiful fucking thing, Like, it's kind of that's a rarity. That's a funny, and a lot of the time as men, like, I feel like a lot of the time when we do talk about our problems, sometimes it's in kind of like a satirical manner, or it's kind of like in one of those things of like, not like a humble brag, but like maybe like a self-martyrdom type of thing. Like a lot of the time when we talk about problems, like it's kind of more of like a listen to what I'm overcoming kind of deal. Like a lot of guys are kind of like that. And sometimes people do just go down the path of, kind of like that victimhood mentality where they're kind of like, oh, woe is me type of thing. But I wanted to say something positive about it because I feel like, the hike that I went on this morning where I'm sitting there talking to my buddy, a lot of the times when we're sitting there talking about issues that we have in our life, issues in our relationships, issues that we have in work, issues that we have in this or that or whatever, like, our nutrition, our exercise, our workout, our energy level, we're just talking and talk. You get with a guy and you're like hiking for 3 hours, you're going to fucking talk about everything, which is why, I think a lot of people maybe should exercise with friends a lot more because I kind of feel like as men, when we're making like face-to-face contact, like eye-to-eye contact, it's a little bit difficult to talk about things that we're like kind of like mulling over or stressing about or worried about or emotional about. And I feel like a lot of the time as men, if you have some sort of like I guess it works for everybody and it's probably relevant to everybody, not just men, women as well, but when you have an activity where you're doing something and you're like not having to look the person dead in the eyes and you're kind of like side by side instead of face to face, you can have some pretty fucking incredible conversations that just like wouldn't be facilitated as well if you just like hey, let's meet up for coffee. Like I've always hated when, I love people, dude, but I've always hated, and maybe there's something behind this, but I've always hated, like kind of like the whole like meet up for coffee. Like, like if I feel like if I'm sitting down at a meal over a table, like it's kind of an intimate thing. Like I really only want to do that with my girl. I don't really want to sit down and I don't know. I'd rather like, let's go for a hike. Let's go for a workout. Like, let's do something. Like I want to just, that's neither here nor there, but I feel like, okay. So I feel like that's why a lot of people need to go on hikes or do something like that. Or maybe like, like if you want to have one of those conversations, but, anyways, yeah, so me and my buddy, we go for this hike, and I'm a little bit scatterbrained today. I just kind of, I woke up from a nap. I've it's been a pretty good day. I did this hike. I did a little bit of work on the podcast, and then, I got some exercise, and then I did a little bit of a nap, and here I am. So, we're a little scatterbrained today, but... Okay, so we've recollected. So I go on this hike with my buddy, and it's fantastic. It starts snowing as we're driving up there, and it's like just a gorgeous fucking view. Like, you're up on the mountain, it's North Vancouver, it's snowy out, you're sitting there, you're talking about things in your life. And for me, like, I feel like a lot of the times when we're having these types of conversations, a lot of the time it's just like hearing someone else go through something where you're like, wow, I fucking, okay, like I wish I like, sometimes I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, but, sometimes you just hear somebody like say something that it's just so relatable and you're like, wow, I've thought about bringing this up with like 4 or 5 different people and a therapist. And I just thought it was like a little bit too far out there, a little bit weird or a little bit uncomfortable, but it sounds like perhaps everyone kind of goes through similar issues. You know, you kind of just have that moment where like, and you like, obviously we've all heard it before, but like you kind of have that moment where you're like, oh, I'm not the weird one here. I'm not a freak. Like it's like this seems a little bit more normal than I thought. And I think a lot of the time that happens with things like relationships where like, you know, and this is another thing about like talking about problems. Like I feel like a lot of the times I think about, you know, in my head when I'm thinking about, you know, is this a topic I want to talk about? Is this a problem I want to talk about with so and so or with my friend or with my family or like whatever it is? And like I have to think a lot of the time, like, am I kind of like airing dirty laundry out, or should I kind of heal from this a little bit or process it a little bit before I start to talk about it with people? And so that's like one things that I think about a lot. It's like, is this kind of like airing out dirty laundry, or am I just kind of like, you know, maybe we should kind of clean the laundry a little bit before we hang it up to dry in front of everybody. And so that's kind of one of the things I think about sometimes. But other things other times, you know, like sometimes I just think like, is this something that I should even, you know, is this fucking weird? Is this like, or like, is there some sort of like a shame or embarrassment or, you know, and just kind of like hearing other people talk about it, you're like, oh yeah, this is just like regular, everyday, normal stuff. Like it's okay to lose your temper sometimes. It's okay to be embarrassed about this or that or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I guess that's just kind of like the long and short of it. Like I was just kind of thinking about like kind of like talking about these issues, talking about these problems and just working through this in my head. And, you know, me and my buddy are just kind of sitting there talking for hours and hours and hours. And I was just thinking about that, like this idea of, you know, I always go back and forth, and I'm sure a lot of men do, with like, is talking about my problems going to be a productive thing? Is it going to be a good thing or a bad thing? Is it going to help me or is it going to hurt me? And, you know, there is kind of like arguments to be made about either side of it, because I feel like, you know, there was studies done and science done, and I could be wrong about this, but I remember reading about it a couple years ago, you know, like the idea of like those rage rooms. And, you know, like there was this idea about these rage rooms that like, the idea, what if you guys aren't familiar with it, obviously I'm pretty sure everybody's fucking heard of this, but it's kind of like one of those things where like you pay to go into a room, they give you maybe like safety glasses and like a fucking helmet and whatever, and then like a sledgehammer and like a chainsaw. I don't know what they give you. I've never done it, but I've heard about it. I've seen videos of it where like people, like you go in, you can like smash TVs or like maybe tables or I don't know, like piggy banks. Maybe it's scalable for your strength level. I don't know. But like kind of this idea of like you can go in, smash some shit, and then start to feel better. And I think like there was studies that were done, and it was something along the lines of like the idea was you were going to get your rage out. You're going to go in, you got all this pent up rage, you go in, smash some stuff, and that's supposed to help you better so that you don't like hit your friends or hit your you know, whatever it is. And what they found was like it started to create an association with like violence and anger, and like this it kind of carved that neurological pathway a little bit deeper. And what the study was finding is obviously it was a little bit counterproductive. Like basically what you were doing was enforcing and strengthening that neurological pathway of like, okay, when we get angry, like we deal with it via violence. And so like it kind of had like this reverse effect. And I feel like a lot of the time, sometimes, you know, kind of like this idea of like venting or like dumping your fucking problems out on people can kind of be the same thing. Like it's like almost like this addictive, like kind of like you know, you're just kind of like just in this like negative kind of headspace where, you know, you say these things and then people kind of just tell you it's okay, or tell you, like, oh my goodness, it's so like, that's so tough. Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're going through that. And then you just kind of like talk about it more, and then you talk about it more. And like the whole time is nothing, everything is just being focused on like, first of all, like me, but also, and I'm not trying to like do the whole like victim blame thing, but I'm just trying to say like, does it, you know, do we think 100% of the time like it's always like the method or the technique that we want to use? Like, or is this kind of maybe carving some sort of a neurological pathway of like going down this like, oh, when I feel sad, then I have to like reinforce that by continuing down that. And I think that, I guess I'm not trying to shame anybody or try and say that we shouldn't talk about things, but I think that what I am trying to say, maybe this is a better way to take it. Maybe what I'm trying to say is, I think that a lot of the times we tend to talk, and some people obviously, and I've been in this, I've been on both sides, so I can kind of talk from experience, but I think sometimes people need to share their problems more and talk more about their problems, because we do have that kind of feeling of like, I said this to somebody the other day. Somebody told me a story where they kind of like locked themselves out on a balcony, like fourth story, like at an apartment. And I literally said to them, I said, thank you for telling me that story, because that's one of those things that would happen to me. And then in the back of my head, I'd be like, oh, of course this shit only happens to me. This stuff always happens to me. And so like when I hear people say things like that or tell me stories like that, I'm like, yo, thank you for telling me that, because that is very humbling and reminder that like, oh yeah, this stuff happens to everybody. Like I'm not like, it turns out the world's not out to get me, And so there is like these huge benefits and being able to learn from a shared experience and there's a lot of benefits to talking about those things. But sometimes, what's more effective than talking about your problems is taking steps towards fixing them, taking steps towards solving them. And I think that sometimes, like a lot of the time, some of the issues that we deal with on a daily basis, and I'm talking more about right now, I'm talking more about like kind of like the day-to-day struggles that we have, not like big life-altering issues, but I'm just talking about the day-to-day struggles that we have. Sometimes like they can literally be solved, and this happens to be the case as well with like some big life-altering issues as well. But sometimes these problems can be solved faster than they can be explained. Sometimes if we actually just like think to ourselves, can I solve this on my own? Can I solve this right now? Like, what are some of the things that I need to do to fix this issue? I think a lot of the time we can fix our problems and fix our issues a lot faster than we could like sit down and explain it and talk to somebody about it. And so like I think a lot of the time when we're thinking about, oh, should I talk about this issue? Should I think about this issue? Maybe we should ask like, am I able to solve this issue? Because I think that a lot of the time, and if you're anything like me, obviously, like I'm a talker. I'm sitting here. It's been fucking 19 minutes. I'm just sitting here talking about myself, and so it's like, obviously, I'm a talker. I'm going to talk about everything. I'm going to talk about the things I like. I'm going to talk about the things I don't like. I'm going to talk about the things that are trending on Twitter, and yes, I still call it Twitter, but like it's like, I think a lot of the time I have to ask myself. It's like, is it possible for me to solve this problem faster than I can explain it to somebody? Like, am I going to really burden somebody with this, or am I just going to fix this issue? And I think that a lot of the time we're like kind of thinking about, where am I even supposed to start with this? Where am I even supposed to, maybe I do need to talk to somebody. I think a lot of the time I even just think like thinking about talking to somebody is like a helpful thing to do. And we don't, like, sometimes I just kind of think like, I have a couple of buddies of mine. I don't know if you guys have friends like this. I'm sure you do, where you're like, you can kind of assume what they're going to say when you're going to tell them something. You're like, for example, like if I'm like going to message my buddy Miles and I'm like, yo, this happened, whatever, like I can kind of like already kind of guess where his head's going to be. Like if I share a meme with him, like I know what he's going to laugh at, what he's going to be like, yo, that's fucked up, don't send me, that kind of stuff. And I feel like sometimes I think about that. Like if I'm like, oh, I'm going to talk to this person or I'm going to vent to this person. Sometimes you have something on your mind and someone's like, hey, what's up? And you're like kind of running through it in your head of like, should I share this with this person or blah, 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 blah. And I think that sometimes it can be a helpful meditation or a thought process of like thinking about, what advice would my dad give me? What advice would my friend give me? What advice would this person give me? And you can kind of like predetermine it. Like I think you can do this with work as well, as like, when you encounter something that you maybe an issue you haven't dealt with at work before, you're like, oh, I'm going to go ask my boss. You could kind of visualize like, what are they going to say about this? And just kind of implement whatever like, assumed advice that they're going to give you before you even go to them with that problem. Does that start to make sense? And so I feel like a lot of the time what we can do is, maybe not instead of, but maybe before we start to talk about our issues and talk about our problems with our friends and family and loved ones, we can think about like, what would they say? What advice would they give? Maybe I should do that. Like maybe there's things that instead of like I'm coming to them with a problem, maybe you can come to them with an elaborate story of like, hey, I was dealing with this problem and you're never going to guess how I solved it. I think a lot of the time, yeah, these problems can be solved faster than they can be talked about. And I think a lot of the times as well, we can kind of go down these pathways, these negative, downward spirals of like, almost like the rage room where we're like kind of preconditioning or solidifying that neurological pathway of like, oh, I have this issue and now I have to dwell on it and I have to talk about it. I have to do this and I have to sit in my emotions and it's like, well, the issue could literally be solved like in a faster time than you do all of that. So like, I think, and of course the question is like, well, where do I start? Like, what do I start doing? And honestly, like one of the things that I've been thinking about recently, that I like one of the tactics I've been using recently is like, just start small. Just start literally with the bare minimum, whatever breaks the threshold of getting you working towards, whatever it is you're actually intending to do. Like not just building momentum, but like, if you're somebody that's like me and you kind of have these debates in your head, like these almost conversations or like, negotiations in your head of like, oh, should I do this? Or should I not do this? Like, is it better if I do this work or is it better if maybe I can do it tomorrow? Maybe I can do it. I start to have those negotiations with myself. And the thing I've been trying to think about recently, or the tactic I've been trying to use is just doing like the literal bare minimum to get started. Like if it's like, hey, I'm going to go for a run and I just really fucking can't. And I just like, oh, I'd rather just sit here. One more video, one more thing, whatever it is. It's like, let's just get the shoes on. Let's just go downstairs to the front door and sit down on the stair there instead of in my office on a comfy couch or whatever it is. Like what's the bare minimum you can do just to get the ball rolling? For me, like a lot of the time as well, like when I'm like kind of thinking about topics of the podcast or, oh, I should record, or, hey, I sit down to record. Like sometimes it's just like, hey, let's just turn the lights on and sit down in the room and turn the microphone. Half the time it's like literally by the time I hit record, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. And then like 5, 10, 15 minutes in, I'm like, I guess this is the road we're going down. And it's like, dude, sometimes you just need to get started. And so on that note, I know it's a little bit of a scatterbrained episode today, but it is a Monday and we are hitting it hard today. And I hope you guys enjoy your day, your week, and I hope that you guys, it's a beautiful one today. And I know it was a beautiful day today. It is nighttime now. It's a little dark. It's dark at fucking 3:30 in the afternoon nowadays here, but it's going to be a beautiful week. And so on that note, if you guys enjoy this episode, found value in it, made you laugh or whatever it is, please do share it with a friend, rate it 5 stars, leave a little review, do anything you can do to help me out, please, and I'll do anything I can do to help you out. So much love, peace out, see you guys next week, love you all, bye.